Hi, this is Seth Harper,
And I'm Asher Callio.
and you're listening to the Living Uncharted podcast.
Here we go again, people.
Episode 3.
That's the one. That's the
Yeah,
one.
absolutely. I know I'm happy to be back recording again. I miss it. Honestly, I wish that we recorded more often. I know as a beginning podcast, it's good to space out episodes a little bit, but I don't know, man. I love recording with you. It's so much fun.
It's been really fun. It feels like forever since we've recorded, but it also doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
We're glad to be back.
Yeah, we are. So yeah, on this riveting third episode, we're going to continue the story of our trip to Colorado that we took. I know that we left a little bit of a cliffhanger about that in the last episode. But before that, we've got a couple housekeeping items to take care of. First of all, I'd just like to ask you guys that if you like the podcast, if you want to support what Asher and I are doing, I'd ask that you guys follow, subscribe, leave a review wherever you listen. This really helps us to get more visibility and helps us to know what you guys like about it, what you don't like. But only do it if you actually like the podcast. We don't want to sound like we're begging you.
And we don't want no posers.
That's right. But yeah, if you enjoy it, if you like what we've been doing, you find it entertaining, or you just want to support us in what we're doing, yeah, make sure you, wherever you listen, follow, subscribe, leave a review, etc.
And for this episode specifically, make sure you stay till the end because we've got a little bit of news. Our first guest is going to be coming on next episode, so stay tuned for a little sneak peek of that.
There we go. Well, yeah, without further ado, we'll jump right back into it. The story of our Colorado trip. Before we actually continue into our story, if you guys haven't taken the time to listen to the second episode titled Squibble or Squiggle, make sure you go back and listen to that one before you listen to this one. We introduced the Colorado story in that one. So if you just start with this one, won't make as much sense. So make sure you go back and listen to that one first if you have not already.
It's a long episode, but it's a good one.
Absolutely.
Don't miss out on it.
100%. So yeah, we ended the last episode by describing that first full day that we had in Colorado. That was Monday, where we were on the high ropes course. We talked a little bit about that. And so that leads us into the Tuesday of the trip, where the main thing that we did on that day was rappelling.
Oof.
That was kind of an insane day, honestly.
This was a great day.
It
Some
was.
of us.
It was. I don't know. So for me, I had never rappelled before, and I was actually pretty excited about it once I heard what it was, where you're, strapped into a harness and you're going down the side of a cliff. That sounded really exciting to me. And so yeah, I have a very distinct memory from what happened on this day. But Asher, I'm actually gonna throw it over to you first. What were some of your most distinct things that you remember from rappelling?
Sure. Yeah. So we got there. I had rappelled before, and I don't remember the exact height of the face we were rappelling. It was probably I don't know, probably a good 50 feet.
That's what I was thinking. I was trying to think about it, and I was thinking like
50,
40 to
60.
50 feet, somewhere in that
Yeah,
range.
somewhere. And so yeah, I think they already had all the ropes and stuff set up for us. So people just started going down. And there was kind of like one of the leaders had said possibly some of us could, I forget what they called it, but some of us could rappel down face first. And so the people who had rappelled before were like, pumped for that.
Yeah,
Um,
when I heard about that, I was like, nah, I'm good. I'll stick with going down backward.
we'll wait on that. Yeah, so I was pumped for that, but I was also pumped just to rappel normally. So I think I did a couple runs of that, and I mean, there were a lot of people, so you would just be like, you'd go maybe once or twice, and then sit at the bottom and watch people eat your little bag lunch that you brought with you,
Yeah, exactly.
um, and just mess around with the other people on the trip.
Yeah. Because I think at the bottom of the cliff, that was kind of where everyone who wasn't currently rappelling was kind of hanging out.
Yeah,
Wasn't there like a stream that was flowing through that area that you could kind of walk around in?
yeah, there was like a stream and like a perfect little a little meadow. I have no idea. I don't remember that, to be honest.
I thought I remembered that. Yeah, it wasn't like a deep stream or wide or anything. It was
I
just like
Oh, you might be right. Yeah, there was
the
like
kind of thing where
a
you
little
could
bit of
like
water.
walk around in it and like
Yeah,
jump from rock to rock and stuff like that. Yeah. No, that was a good experience. I know for me, I wasn't planning on doing the rappelling going down forwards. I was gonna leave that to the professionals. But I was actually pretty excited to rappel going down backwards for the first time. And so obviously you have to walk up to the cliff in order to get to the spot where you would start rappelling. And I was walking up with one of our friends named John. And don't worry, I got his permission to mention his name on the episode.
When you told me you got his permission, I was like, "Why? What are you going to talk about John for this episode?" And now I know exactly
Now
what
you
you're going
know.
to say.
Yeah. Uh-huh. So as we were walking up to the cliff, I was super excited, super confident. I thought I was going to do a really good job. I wasn't going to be scared at all. Wasn't nervous whatsoever. And I'm walking up with our friend John, right? And he's just a nervous wreck. Like I had to continually like encourage him to just keep walking to get up there and he would do a great job. And it took a lot of convincing to try to get him up there.
John is a pretty brave dude, but he does not mess with heights.
Well, and see, that's what I thought. But then, oh my gosh, this was so funny the way this ended up. So we both do finally get to the top of the cliff and they strap us into our harnesses. And that's the point where I start freaking out
Mm.
because I realize that we are super high up. And I actually don't really love heights either. I can usually deal with it, but it's definitely not my preference. And so it took me a while to take that first step backwards to get off the cliff because
Oh,
I
dude,
was
that's the scariest. I mean, that's the scariest part of it.
I feel like I was sitting there for a solid 2 or 3 minutes before I
Yeah.
actually did just because yeah, once I was strapped in, I was right on the edge of the cliff and I was like, holy crap, what am I about to do? But once John and I both went down, we were going down right next to each other. I'm still not doing well, right? Like I'm just going down, and I distinctly remember that I was just repeating Psalm 23 over and over again as I'm going down because I needed something to comfort me as I was doing this. I was I was not having it. And John is next to me and he's like, "Oh, Seth, it's fine. Just keep going. You're doing great."
Seth is over there as I walk through the valley of the shadow of death.
Dude, exactly. That's what I was doing. That's exactly what I was doing. I was like, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall.
I will fear no evil.
Oh man. And John's just chilling. You know, he's
That's
having no issues whatsoever once we're actually going
I
down.
remember. Yeah, that's right. You guys kind of flip flopped,
We
like
totally
his.
did. We completely flip-flopped how we were feeling. So we both make it down and I start to get my feelings back a little bit. And I'm like, all right, I'm good for the day. I'm just going to sit down here and watch everyone else do it. Because I think if you wanted to go again, you were able to take a second or potentially even a third round down
Yeah.
if there was time and there wasn't other people that hadn't gone yet. But I was like, nah, I made it through, and I don't know. I feel like that was kind of continuing a theme that we brought up in the first episode where we were talking about this trip, the last episode, where like I I really had to face a lot of fears that I didn't realize that I had
Hmm.
going into this trip, and it was
Yeah, that
good for
trip.
good for
Oh,
me.
sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead, go ahead.
That trip definitely, I think, for a lot of people, like it brought up like new fears. Like you felt like you were maybe fine going into it, and then you're like, oh well, maybe not so much.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I feel like that's the case with a lot of things in our life, though. Like we're just going through our life day to day, and we might have something that like we're insecure about or we're worried about that we've just gotten really good at like forgetting about or kind of hiding,
Mhm.
even if it's not intentionally. But then something triggers it to bring it to the surface, and that's when we have to deal with it.
And that's God, baby.
Yeah, yeah,
Definitely brings those scenarios into our life, to I think in some ways to see try to if we'll go right to relying on him to help us, or if we'll first go to ourselves to try to be like, no, I can do this on my own.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I completely agree. So, so yeah, this was just one of those examples of, you know, had this fear of heights and everything that it took me a while to get over the edge of that cliff, but once I did, it was really good and had a really nice sense of satisfaction when finally got to the bottom. So,
And
um,
anytime you do something kind of like mentally challenging like that, where you have a lot of fear before you do it, but then you do it and you realize that it's not so bad, there's just a huge like, oh yes.
yeah, exactly. Asher, I'm interested to hear more about. So you did rappel going down face first, right?
Yeah.
What was that like?
So it was probably like I was sitting at the bottom watching more people go down, and I think one of the leaders had like a radio, and they were talking with another leader who was at the top. And so I think I remember being like kind of standing right next to this leader with our friend Daniel, who we'll talk about
We'll
a
definitely talk
lot
about
in
him.
this podcast.
Yeah.
But he and I were kind of like standing by him just so like so if he figured out that we were going to be able to do it, we'd be the first two to know.
You were just waiting there chomping at the
We
bit.
were waiting. Yeah. So
And then there's just me huddled up in the corner, just nibbling on my sandwich.
you guys go ahead. No. But so he gets the call and we're like, yes, we're gonna get to like, oh, we're feeling on top of it. But then we like walk up there and we're faced with the reality of what we were so excited to do, and it is
I'm in danger.
terrifying. Oh my gosh. I remember that day also. If I feel like if you go a little bit of time in between repelling, you have to like re get over that fear of going the initial step back
Yeah.
over the wall. So I had that repelling normally, but then repelling face first, that was like upped to 10 because they were kind of like coaching us like you it's gonna be a lot more on you to catch yourself, and like the chance that you'll get hurt doing it this way is a lot higher. And so that's why we're not letting everyone do it. So I remember
Had to
like
reserve it for the ones that looked particularly physically equipped.
I like looked at Daniel and I was like, okay, this is real. So he and I both got strapped up together. Actually, there were two ropes on that part of it, and so we got to go down at the same time. And that first little bit was just super sketchy, but we did it, and then we're just kind of making our way down the wall, and we're feeling like men. But then we got to this part where the cliff face kind of dipped in a little bit, so we actually weren't going perpendicular to the wall anymore. We kind of had to, our faces were like going even closer to the wall. Um,
Wall by wall, you mean like cliffside?
yeah. And so that was like basically we were starting it all over. And I definitely was sketched out for that. But we just kept on going. I remember my legs being so much more sore doing it that way because I was just so much more tense.
Yeah. Well, and I bet you
So
the adrenaline was so much higher too.
yeah, it was. So it was really fun, but it was yeah, the fear was a lot higher for that one.
I can imagine.
But we made it out alive
There's
with
part of
some
me.
bragging rights. So there's that.
What was that?
With some serious bragging rights.
Oh yeah. Nope, that's for sure. I don't know. There's a part of me that wishes I had done it if oh man. See, here's the thing. I still don't love heights even now.
Yeah.
It's not my favorite thing. If someone were to ask me to go skydiving,
Mm,
part of me would really want to because I feel like once you take that initial jump and you're just going through the air, it's actually probably super fun.
that reminds me, Seth. Do you want to go skydiving?
Oh man. Asher's just trying to brainstorm ways to come up with content for the podcast. And he's like, Seth, want to go skydiving?
I'm always thinking.
So yeah, I don't know. I
No, Seth, not because I want to. It's for the podcast. No, I don't like this any more than you. We got to do it for the podcast.
Oh man, exactly. So yeah, if I had that opportunity now to rappel going down forward, I would probably do it. As I'm thinking about it, it's still not my favorite idea, but I'd probably do it. I would kind of want to have that experience. So, but
It
that's
is cool, like just to prove to yourself that you can, kind of thing.
yeah. Well, and I guarantee, like, I feel like for a lot of these things, to a certain extent, you do need to be physically fit and like have some strength. But I feel like it's way more of a mental game
Yeah.
than a physical game.
Yep.
And
And
so,
in general, it's very safe.
yeah, yeah, exactly. The odds of a harness breaking incredibly small, you know. So yeah, I feel like it's just getting over that mental block of what you're about to do.
Yep.
So
And it's honestly like a lot of things in life. That
yeah.
first step
Mhm.
is very tough, and then it just gets progressively easier as you go.
Exactly.
We're super corny on this podcast.
Hey, but it's true though. Like,
Yeah.
you know, if if we can provide little helpful life tidbits every once in a while, I'm sure people won't hate that. Hey, you came here for the adventure and you got some life advice at the same
The
time. You
corniness,
know.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that I mean that was pretty much that day. We we repelled, and then everybody gets back in the sketchy vans,
Yep.
and you go back to camp. I think we had like a campfire without the fire. I remember specifically on that trip, we couldn't have fires because that area was under like a they had like a no fire.
Yeah,
Um,
wasn't it? Well, it was particularly dry at that point.
yeah, super
Uh,
dry.
and wasn't there like hadn't it been like really windy recently too?
Mm,
Pretty sure that was also part of it.
yeah,
Which I feel like in general, Colorado is a very dry state.
yeah,
anytime you're getting west, it culminates in Arizona, obviously, which is what everyone thinks of when they think of dry state. But
And Arizona is dry.
dude, I'm sure we'll talk about that at some. Asher, have you been to Arizona before?
I have. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right. You took that one trip. Yeah, I'm sure that at some point we'll both talk about our respective experiences in Arizona, which it's hot and it's dry. So
Hmm.
yeah, no, that's the gist of that Tuesday. Really good second day. Really good experience for
Yeah.
both of us, I'd say.
Yeah. I think going into that trip, I had no idea. I knew we would get to try rappelling, and I'd rappelled before, but I had no idea we'd get to face first rappel. So that was a cool added bonus to that day.
That is epic.
Also, if you guys haven't noticed yet, I am a little under the weather, so apologies for the if I sound a little stuffy.
I guarantee no one noticed, man. You still sound amazing. You could record an audiobook right now and it'd be a bestseller.
So guys, today I'm gonna be reading from my new book.
That's what he's gonna sound like when he's recording his memoirs when he's like seven.
Oh no. So, I was born at a young age. Um, Seth, what if you were gonna write a children's book, what do you think it'd be about?
Oh Lord. A children's book?
Anyway, we don't have time for that. Back to the episode.
I feel that's right. We'll have to save that for an episode.
Yep.
That'll just be Asher and I's hypothetical ideas for writing.
That'll be a couple months in when we're just scraping the bottom of the content barrel.
Dude, if we're scraping the bottom of the barrel after 2 months, we're kind of screwed.
Oh, boy.
We got it. Hey, we know what we're doing. It might not
I
seem like
mean,
it
not
sometimes.
2 months, 2 years. I mean,
That's right. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
We're professionals.
We have plenty of content. Don't let anyone tell you differently.
Hey, you know what? Sometimes life just comes to you and gives you content, you know? So, so yeah, that will lead us into Wednesday of the trip. This marks roughly about the halfway point of the trip. And the activity for this particular day was rock climbing. And similar to my introduction to the description of the high ropes course, when I say rock climbing, I'm not talking about one of those indoor rock climbing areas where they have the fake artificial handholds and footholds. This
This
is
ain't your grandma's rock climbing.
That's right. Asher, give him a description of what this rock climbing was like.
So this day, I would say it was about the same height, probably right around 40, 50 feet. But unlike rappelling, with rappelling, it was pretty much it was pretty flat, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
Um,
for the most part. For the most part,
Rock climbing, it was less so.
to say the
It's
least.
always going to be more fun for rock climbing.
Yeah, because like you're still in a harness, but you start at the bottom and you climb up different rock faces, and you've kind of got to just like feel around in the natural rock face, cliffside, whatever you want to call it, and figure out what's going to work best for a handhold, for a foothold, in order to get to the top.
And that was definitely a fun part of it too. If you were on the ground, if you've climbed before, you could kind of give your friends tips like,
Yeah, exactly.
oh, like you got a foothold left foot just up a couple inches or to the side a little bit. Because when you're on the wall,
Dude, every time you say wall, I imagine that you're talking about an indoor something.
oh, yeah, true. When you're what do I say? When you're on
We're in the outside, son.
the I'm outside. I mean, face? I don't know. Help
Sure.
me out, Seth. What do I call
I don't know. I'm
it?
an accounting
The
major,
rock
not an
face.
English major.
Seth ain't studying rocks,
I
guys.
don't do the word things.
True. And apparently neither do I. Um,
And here we are recording a podcast where all we do is talk.
What is going on? So you're on the rock face, not the wall. Your mind is very much it's on so many different things at once. You're trying to make sure that you're close enough to the wall that you're not gonna like your foot and handholds aren't gonna slip. You're holding on to one rock at one height and another rock at a different height. So your ability to like look down and see where a foothold is significantly diminished. So having someone on the ground to kind of spot for you is really helpful.
Yeah, definitely. I really appreciated having that added challenge of not having obvious footholds and handholds. I know
Mm.
Asher, I think you started to bring that up a little bit earlier. And there's just, in my opinion, there's just something more exciting and, pardon the cheesiness, but adventurous about just being in nature
Yeah.
and climbing on something that wasn't specifically crafted, by someone who's building an indoor gym. This is just you're climbing God's creation. So,
Yeah. And Garden of the Gods is where we were climbing. And it's just a beautiful area. Besides the climbing, you're up there on the face and you're just looking out and seeing unadulterated nature.
I still have a multi-tool that I bought from their gift shop
Oh yeah.
that has my name on it, which has caused me to never forget that we were at Garden of the Gods for rock climbing.
I looked for one also, but somehow they didn't have Asher.
Which is
Imagine.
honestly offensive. So,
Step it up, Garden of the Gods gift
Garden of,
shop.
that's right. Garden of the Gods, I'm talking at you right now. I feel like you got to up your inclusivity if you don't have Asher as one of the options for your personalized multi-tools. Come on, guys, what are we doing?
It is 2020. Yeah, it wasn't 2023 then, but
No, that would have been like 2017, 18.
yeah, something like that.
One other thing that I can think about from my experience of rock climbing is that overall it was really enjoyable for me. Like I said, I had a lot of fun doing it. But once you get to the top, how do you think you're going to get back down? By rappelling,
Yep.
which is exactly what I had to get over the fear of doing the day before. And
Which is
so,
honestly really smart that they had us rappel the first day.
yes,
I didn't even think about that, but like you're gonna need both for rock climbing,
yep,
so you might as well learn to rappel first.
yep, exactly. I mean, they do this for a living. I would imagine they probably thought this through a little bit.
You would hope so.
So, but yeah, I got over it. I got back to the bottom, and yeah, overall it was really good. Asher was mentioning how the Garden of the Gods area was just a really beautiful area. I know that once we were done with the actual climbing part of it, we just got to walk around within the park a little bit, and that was super cool.
Yeah.
Just to see the surrounding nature and an area was just really, really gorgeous. And oh man, dude. The saddest thing that I'm thinking of as we're talking about all this is that I have not been to Colorado since that
Ooh,
trip.
couldn't be me.
Were you there? Have you been there since?
But yeah, I went. So I was Daniel's best man in his wedding
Oh yeah, that's right.
2 years ago,
Yeah.
and so he and I did a little bachelor getaway.
Bachelor jaunt.
Yeah, went down there, stayed with some family friends, and hiked a bunch. I think we were there 3 days.
That's a
It
good
was,
idea for a
yeah,
bachelor party.
yeah, it was great.
Anything else from the rock climbing day, Asher? Any exclamation points?
Um, I love rock climbing. If you guys know anything about me, that's like I've been climbing something since I was like 6 years old.
He
Um,
climbed right out of his mother's womb.
that is terrifying. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Um,
It's a terrifying image if you really think about it.
Yeah. Yep. I could probably do a whole episode on how climbing has just been like a constant in my life. I think at different times in my life, I've kind of not climbed as much, and then it always I just come back to it
Yeah.
every time. So yeah, that day was really special for me. Climbing with friends that I'd had for a little while and new friends, encouraging people and being encouraged as I was climbing. Especially like it was just nice. Like everyone on the ground, if you were like struggling with a move, everyone was like cheering, "You got this!" Like, come
Oh
on.
yeah. That's absolutely. No one was making fun of you. No one was tearing you down. It was all super supportive.
Which is more than can be said for other times in high school.
Yeah, absolutely. That I'm actually really glad that you brought that up. And I feel like that was a reoccurring thing throughout the trip. I mean, obviously it was a Christian organization that we were camping with and was scheduling all these things, but I don't know. I know a lot of Christians that aren't always encouraging, aren't always supportive, you know? And so just yeah, just in general, you're right. That was really cool that was what we got to experience through that. So that was Wednesday.
Yep.
That brings us to Thursday, which Thursday was personally my favorite day of the trip, I think, for a couple of reasons. One, our activity for that day was whitewater rafting, which, oh man, that was
Ooh.
something I had never done that before, but I have done it since, and I love it. This is one of my favorite activities. I just love to do it. And we got to do it on the Arkansas River, which, you know how the cliffhanger at the end of the last episode, I said that Asher fell in. Don't worry, we'll get to that. But this was also my birthday. This was my 16th birthday
You,
on on this
little
Thursday
stuff,
of this.
little stuff.
Oh man, like yeah, I was young at that point. But little did I know as that day started, this would be a birthday that I would never forget.
This was a great day.
It was it was so awesome, dude. I feel like the last 2 days of the trip, Thursday and Friday, were just awesome.
Yeah, the whole trip was great. Thursday and Friday were pretty great.
Yeah.
Um,
They definitely saved the best for last.
but I remember it started out kind of lame. Like it was kind of a long van ride over to where we were going to be whitewater rafting. And then I think I remember we got there and we had to wait more. And I was like, what? What are we doing here?
Yeah, you're right. Because at first, didn't we? At first, I think we technically showed up at the wrong location at first. At least my van did. And then
Oh, okay.
we weren't too far off. We were at one of the locations at the company that we were rafting through, but just wasn't the one that we were going to be starting at.
Yeah.
So we had to redirect there. I also know that that day was the day where, for a lot of people, altitude sickness had started to set
Ooh,
in a little bit,
yeah.
which again, if you've been out to that area of the country, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't been out there, the altitude in Colorado is significantly higher than it is in the Midwest, East Coast, etc. And so if your body's not used to that, because it's a lower level of oxygen when you're up that
Yeah.
high. And
Isn't
so
there also somewhere in Colorado there's like the Mile High City? Is that a thing? One of the cities.
I think I'm pretty sure that's a nickname for Denver, I want to
Okay.
say is Mile High. But
And
um
that's above sea level. But
yeah, right. Yep. And so since we had to take a van ride over to where we were whitewater rafting, that didn't help because for
ooh, yeah.
I ended up being okay, but I know for a lot of people it combined the altitude sickness with motion sickness from the van.
And
And
those
so,
roads were not exactly
nope, roads were bumpy.
paved very well.
A lot of people on the way over there were just doing everything they could to keep from heaving. But anyway, enough about the negative parts of that day, because
Yeah, no, guys, this was a great day. No,
yeah, that's everything that we've been talking about so far.
really.
Um, but yeah, so we get checked in, we get our life vests, our helmets that we got to wear, and I'm pretty sure, Asher, I want to say that we were all in like groups of like six or something like that
Yeah,
for each tube.
5 or 6, yeah,
So,
to a raft.
yep. And so they gave us the rundown of all of the things you need to know when you're out on the water, how to be safe while you're doing it, how to rescue someone if someone falls out of the tube, because even though you're wearing a life jacket, you're wearing a helmet, you're taking all the precautions, falling out of a tube while you're whitewater rafting is actually relatively common.
Yep. They were putting a lot of faith in a bunch of scrawny 15-year-olds.
Yeah, they were. No kidding.
If someone goes down, you're gonna save them.
Yeah. Because, like, when you're in the tube, you're not strapped onto anything
Dude,
either. You kind of just have to, like, wedge yourself
yeah.
into the side of the tube.
You
So
get
you're,
creative.
yeah, you get creative, absolutely. So, like, you're kind of stable, but you're not strapped down to anything. So if you hit a rock too hard or, a specific rapid, you could go flying out, you know?
I would say that was definitely a theme of this trip was kind of stable.
I
It's
mean,
a good place to be for growth. Relative stability.
there was that risk factor that was
Yeah,
there.
for sure.
And so again, Asher, feel free to cut in whenever you think of something, but they said that the trip would be in two distinct sections where about halfway down there was a stopping point where we would all stop to eat lunch. And
Oh yeah.
remember that?
I think you remember more from this day than I did.
This was my favorite day by far. So we would stop halfway. They had someone there ahead of time to prepare lunch for us. And then if you wanted to, you could stop there. You didn't have to keep going for the rest of the trip because the second half of the trip, they said, was supposed to include some rapids that could get up to category 5 rapids, which, if you know anything about rapids, it's on a scale of 1 to 6, with 1 being like teeny tiny little 5-year-old Timmy rapids and
Timmy returns.
and 6 being you could potentially die rapids.
Yeah.
And they said that some of the ones that we'd be facing could get up to 5. But it wouldn't be until the second half of the trip. So, once you got to that halfway point, you ate lunch, you had an out right there if you wanted to.
Which I feel like they were pretty good on this trip about if you want to push yourself, there's that option. If you are like more there for the nature and just to learn more about God and be with friends, there's options for that too.
Which, just for the record, if you're pushing yourself, you can learn about God at the same time.
Absolutely.
Those are not two mutually
Absolutely.
exclusive
Yeah.
options.
No, no.
But oh man, I loved it so much. Just like I think, Asher was describing how he has a special affinity with rock climbing. I have a special affinity with water. And just in the sense that like I love lakes, I love rivers, I love being out on a boat, I love tubing, I love swimming, anything related to water, I'm there for it. And,
Yeah.
and so yeah, it was just so much fun because there was a little bit of adrenaline rush because like, it's really fun going over these rapids that are like sometimes get really high and really fast. Um,
And it spins your tube around
yeah,
or the nose goes like pretty much straight down and then like comes up super fast.
yeah,
You're getting the spray from all sides.
exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was so epic. I know at one point as we were going down, there was one kid that fell out, and we had to practice. What they taught us is so in order to get someone back into the tube or the raft, whatever you want to call it, once they've fallen out, you want once you've grabbed onto them, you want to first push them back into the water and then pull them up in order to get them back into the tube because when you push them down into the water, you get the extra force coming back up from the life jacket, and that will help you get a little bit of momentum to get them back into the tube. And I think Asher, I don't know if you remember this, but the guy, our tour guide who was giving us that instruction, also said that it's kind of a punishment for them for falling out of the tube. Just give them a little bit of a dunk first and then pull them back in. So yeah, that was fun. I know I got to be one of the people who helped grab them and dunk them and pull them back in. So you could say that I saved a guy's life.
I don't know if I ever told anyone this, but I think
Oh no, what
I
are you gonna say?
I think the person that fell in was pushed in,
Yo, what?
and
No, don't
think
say it.
I was the one who told the person to push the other person in.
Sure.
I felt terrible about it. Also because I didn't realize how bad of a spot it was
You
to
conniving
push them
hoodlum.
in. I thought it would be funny. It was not funny.
Oh,
Suffice
dude.
it to say, it was a very bad decision, and I felt bad about it the rest of the day, and it
Uh,
has continued to haunt me into my adult life. I'm actually really glad for this podcast as an outlet to just
you had
publicly ask for forgiveness. Um,
uh
either one of the, yeah,
had to get that off your chest.
yeah.
That
I
person
think,
that fell in or was pushed in because of Asher.
I think it, yeah, I think it was.
If you're listening, we feel you, and Asher's sorry, and I apologize for the emotional trauma that you had to go through because of that.
I would, I would be willing to.
How are you going? Asher is willing to give you his entire life savings to
Whoa, hey,
compensate you.
all right. Let's actually move on. I'm gonna move on
Uh,
to the.
yeah. So yeah, like we were saying, the rafting trip was split into two parts. Asher and I both continued going for the second part because it was epic.
Yeah,
And yeah, some of the rapids were pretty intense that we got to experience. I I don't know. I don't know how to say for sure whether they were category 4 or category 5 because I've never gone through a category 6 one before. Because if you're going through category 6 ones, they recommend that you're really experienced, really
dude,
strong
I was
swimmer.
just thinking about this. Do you remember the guy in the little tiny kayak
Yeah. Yep.
that was like bobbing around with us? That guy, it like, I feel like every time I go whitewater rafting, which I haven't done many times, but pretty much every time I go, there's some insane guy in his 50s in a little kayak just going over 10-foot falls. And
I
like,
remember him.
yeah, he
He
was
was built.
insane.
He was
Yep.
built different.
He was, you just had that dog in him.
Absolutely. And so we get to the moment that I promised we would tell you guys about, where and I want to say this was like right near the end of the trip. Like we had almost made it all the way to the end without either of us falling in. And Asher, do you remember the point where you fell in? Because if you remember it, you might have a better
Not at
perspective.
all.
You don't?
Not at all.
Do you remember that you did fall in?
No.
Oh, come on, man. Gonna be as
My
much.
memory can't reconcile that I would make such a blunder.
Well, you did.
Okay.
And you blundered it big time. Because at the very end,
I feel
you
like I'm a member of the audience right now. I get to hear about this story.
uh yeah, I guess this is just coming from me and you got to take my word for it. But we were at the very end and you could see the end in sight. You could see where they had the vans and we were going to go back up on shore because we were done. But to get there, you had to go down this little, it was basically a waterfall. Like it wasn't a big one, but we did have to go down it. And you were so close to hanging on. But I think once we hit the water at the bottom, that was just enough to get you to fall off. And yeah, dude, that's just sad that that happened right right as we were about to end, which, oh well.
That's just so sad for you.
That's terrible.
Seth said with as much remorse as he could muster. That's just so sad that you suck at whitewater rafting.
Oh man. Ah.
And yeah, that
Uh,
was pretty much the rest of Thursday.
there's one other thing I want to say about Thursday that I
Yeah.
remember, but I just want to apologize again. This is going to be a longer episode, but I feel like we just got to finish out the story of this trip. It was an epic trip,
Yeah.
and we're almost done. Promise, we're almost done. But one other thing I want to mention from Thursday is that later that night, once we were back at camp, our youth pastor gave me a little pocket knife because it was my birthday. It was like his gift that he was giving me. And he said, I don't know how he got this, but this knife had been confiscated. There we go. That's the word. I almost said compensated. Confiscated from a criminal who had been put into Colorado Springs prison. And I don't know. Apparently, they just give that stuff out. I don't know. But
Like, how is that legal?
I don't know. But he gives it to me and he's like, redeem it, man. Redeem it.
Oh,
And
wow. I didn't realize he like gave it to you with a mission.
yeah, that was really cool. And I still have and use that knife today consistently. So thanks, Carl, for giving that to me. I really appreciate that.
That's a cool memory.
Yeah, and that leads us into Friday. Dun dun
Woo!
dun. The
The
grand
best.
finale.
The best day and the worst day, I would say, of the whole trip.
Yeah, I know why you're saying that, and I know we'll get to that. So, Asher, you want to introduce this one?
Yeah, so we have in our notes here that it was Mount Democrat that we were climbing.
Mhm.
Can never remember the name. I always tell people that it sounded vaguely presidential.
There,
And
hey, that checks out. That's true.
that's about as much as I remember. So
I don't know why I
Friday,
remembered the name. Honestly, I probably remembered it because as soon as I heard it, I was like, "Oh, I can't tell my dad that I'm climbing Mount Democrat."
there you go.
That's probably why I remember it.
Yep. So yeah, the last day was our day to summit. Most of us, it was the first 14er that we'd ever tried. 14er being 14,000 or yeah, 14,000 feet of elevation. Was going to be the summit of Mount Democrat. So yeah, I remember. I think that van ride wasn't too long, and just like the anticipation of it, and like driving through the hills, coming up to it, kept us a lot more like pumped for it. I remember that morning, like making another bag lunch and everybody being like, okay, like we've said it other days. Today, it is super important that you drink water before we go, drink water while we're climbing, and like, yeah, just water throughout. Not too much water while you're walking up the mountain because you will barf.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
and yeah, so we get there, we get out. I remember some wealthy benefactor had paid for a bunch of these like small backpacks
Oh yeah.
with a drinking bladder in them,
Yeah.
and that was super helpful. I still have that backpack, and I don't use it very often, but
I mean, it's pretty
yeah,
worn down at this point because I've still got mine too. But
yeah, mine is like a completely different color than it was, and yeah. Anyway, we had those, so we strap on our backpacks, and they're telling us, okay, like we're gonna climb this mountain, but we want you to find a partner to climb with that you would say is somewhat similar athletic ability to you.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I don't like that was a terrible way to explain that, but
We get you. We get you.
you get the point. So immediately I'm like, where's Seth? I think this is gonna happen. I
Dude,
think we were actually standing pretty close to each
we
other.
were. We totally were. We were standing really close to each other when you.
And I think we like our heads just kind of snapped to each other. And it was like, this is happening.
This, you know how we've been like building up that like this trip was like the initiation of our friendship.
Yeah.
We had started to really get to know each other and start to bond throughout the week. I would say that Friday was probably the crescendo that led to
This
the
was it.
climax
Yeah.
of what really was like, all right, Asher and Seth are friends now.
Obviously you guys can't see it, but I'm like smiling big right
He
now.
is. Oh my gosh, he's so cute.
Uh
I am too.
this
I'm
is
not.
the best part of the story by far. So yeah, it did not take Seth and I long to realize we are gonna climb this mountain together. And we just started out and it was brutal, actually.
It was tough.
I
Yep.
I would say I've never been good at cardio, and I would say I was probably even less prepared for this than I would be now. But we were determined, so we're making our way up and just encouraging each other the whole way climbing up. And I remember us like stopping around lunchtime to eat some lunch. We tried not to eat too much because we were pretty afraid that we would just barf it all up.
Yeah, because
Um,
like as we were climbing up this mountain, there were certain parts that would level out a little bit.
yeah,
That made it a little bit easier for us to just stop there, sit down for a second, eat some food, and then keep going.
yeah, definitely go check out Seth's Facebook page for the picture of us partway up in all our mountain climbing glory.
That's right. Yeah. Facebook
Um,
or Instagram. And no, I am not wearing a kilt. That is just my sweatshirt wrapped around my waist.
but definitely comment that Seth has a nice kilt because that's just funny. So yeah. Anyway, we keep going up. Honestly, like the actual like minute by minute climbing, pretty boring. But like it's boring to tell about. But it was really cool for us because you climb a ways and then you just stop for a minute and like turn around and look at how far you've come and all the stuff you can see because it's just Colorado's beauty is on full display from Mount Democrat.
Yeah. It just you look out and it's gorgeous. Yeah, like I agree. The minute to minute, maybe not super exciting, but we got to talk a lot while we
Yeah,
were doing that and working.
learned a lot about each other on that climb.
Mhm. Absolutely.
And then I remember we were just probably a couple 100 feet from the summit.
We were less than 200 feet away.
Oh, Seth remembers.
Dude, I was so pissed.
Ugh. And we had kind of seen the sky changing a little bit, but I remember a picture we took with some people we were climbing it with, and Seth's hair was like entirely like stock straight up from his head because of the static electricity. And that was right when our leaders told us we had to turn around because of the storm.
That was that was so tough because we were so close to getting all the way to the top. I feel like it would not have been nearly as bad if we had only made it like halfway up. And then
Right.
they were like, "Oh, we got to turn around. Storm's coming in. We want to make sure you guys don't get fried."
But yeah, being I think some people were relieved because they didn't want to even go that high.
Yep.
But Seth and I were crushed. I remember just
That was
being
so
like
hard.
walking down the mountain in such a bad mood.
It was
Uh,
it was tough. But honestly, as we were going down the mountain, one of the other leaders was walking with us, and I think she had started to notice that we were like starting to vibe a little bit over the course of the trip, but that we weren't really, I don't know, quote unquote, officially friends yet. And as we're just walking
we weren't putting any labels on it.
there, yeah, right. And as we're walking, she just blatantly is like, "Well, do you guys want to be friends or not?" And we were both, at first, we kind of just sat there silently, and we were like, "Yeah."
Yeah, I think yeah.
And I think it was kind of at that point where it was especially magnified by the fact that we couldn't make it to the top. But ultimately, a lot of times it's not about the end, it's about the journey that you took to get there.
Yes, sir.
And I know that might sound cheesy too, but like that was really amplified for me as we're walking down. We're feeling dejected about the fact that we couldn't make it to the top. And we were just like, you know, we didn't make it to the top, but we got something even better. And that's an amazing start to a friendship.
Preach it.
So yeah, that was
Maybe the real summit was the friends we made along the way.
that's right. Put a cap on the cheesiness.
Oh man.
So yeah, that was the Colorado trip. It was a great experience, so many fun things that we did, and Asher and I have been great friends ever since.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for bearing with us as we've been talking really long on this episode. We're still going to include our short mini adventures that we had over the past week, but we're going to try to keep them really brief for this time. So I'll kick us off with that. I'm actually going to share a couple really mini ones that I had over the last couple weeks.
Nice.
So I, couple Saturdays ago, I got to go to the Wisconsin versus Ohio State football game, which is a big rivalry in the Big Ten in college sports. And I was going with a couple friends. Me and one friend had gotten there early, so we got our tickets, went inside, and waited for our other friend to get there. So we were waiting inside, but like just we were still like next to the opening gates. And as we were sitting there waiting for our other friend, we saw three different people get arrested by the cops because they were trying to bring alcohol into the stadium.
Whoa.
Straight up, they got cuffed and then taken away into like a basement area of the
Oh,
stadium.
oh.
Like I don't know where they went. They might be dead for all we know. So so that was an interesting thing to witness. And then another quick thing that happened to me was a couple days ago. I had an exam that I was supposed to take this past Sunday. It was an online exam. It was open for the full day of Sunday where you could take it, but it was only going to take like 45 minutes once you started it. And I completely forgot about it. I wake up Monday morning, I open my laptop, look at my course calendar, and realize that I missed the exam. So I'm freaking out. I have no idea what I'm going to do. I email my professor and I'm like, I am so sorry. This was an honest mistake. I promise I'm not trying to cheat or like get an extra study time. I just legit forgot to take it.
And that's
It
when he
was
knew he messed up.
and my professor responds to me and he's like, you know, in the real world, if you have like an important report that you've got to give and you forget to do it, like you can't just do that. There's real life consequences. And he was like, so here's the deal. I'll reopen it for you for a little bit so you can take it, but I'm going to have to give you a penalty because you're taking it late. And I was like, okay, that's fair. And he was like, I want you to give me an offer of what you think the penalty should be for
Ooh.
this exam. And so at first I say that I think it should be a 10% penalty. So like, if I scored an 86%, he'd bring that down to a 76%, for example. And he was like, I don't know. I was thinking something a little bit more significant. I was thinking something somewhere more in the like 25 to 50% range, which I was freaking out at that point. But then he
This
was
professor's like, maybe like give me your first child.
like, yeah, exactly. But He was like, but here's the thing, I'll let you give me a counter offer as long as you provide reasons for your counter offer. And so my counter offer is 15%. I give him reasons why I think that's fair. And he was like, all right, that was a good counter offer. And actually, I am going to give you your original request of 10% because I just wanted you to show me that you could negotiate.
Bartering. All righty.
And so I got to take the test with a minimal penalty. So that was an interesting experience to do that with professor to negotiate for my grade. So yeah, Asher, go ahead.
All right. Here we go. So this is another blue collar mini adventure. Daniel, the same friend I was telling you about before, has been doing some work on his house. He's trying to re-side basically the whole thing. And the task on the docket for the other day was putting house wrap on. Basically like parchment paper, but to waterproof your house. So we set up some ladders and we're up there putting it in. We put the bottom piece on, but then there's this little 3 foot strip right at the top. And so you're probably good 30 feet up, and we didn't have any
Uh,
we didn't have any ropes or anything. So we were just hammering this house wrap into the walls or into the outside of the house. No ropes, just our knees and our feet to hold us on these ladders. And honestly, there wasn't much on the wall to hold on to either. So there were a couple moments, but we got it all wrapped and went back a couple days later to help him tape it up. And yeah, now he's good for the winter, and we'll do the siding in the spring. So that was
dangerous. It
nice,
was rigorous, but they made it through.
but we made it through, and there it is.
Sweet. All right.
So yeah, those are our mini adventures. We're still trying to come up with a name for that. Stay tuned for that.
Yep.
But now for the sneak peek at our next episode. She is a former archaeologist, and that's all I'm going to tell you. You
That's
really
right.
thought you really thought you were going to learn more, but you'll just have to listen back.
That's right. All right. Signing off. Thanks for listening, everybody,
We'll see you in the next episode.
of the Living Uncharted podcast.